Yesterday, February 15th, I was walking back home after hanging out with some friends. Before anyone asks, I was completely sober and in my right mind. I've never been afraid to walk alone in the dark. I'm quite tall and intimidating looking from a distance, and I always bring a pocket knife when I know I'll be walking in the dark. Anyways, I was walking past some woods on the way back to my house, and I heard my mother's voice call, "Gabriel, help!" from inside the woods. I immediately recognized her voice and turned to look into the woods. She kept calling my name over and over. I couldn't see anything. It was far too dark to see through the trees. "Mom," I called back, heading towards the woods. She sounded like she was in trouble and scared. I assumed that she had gone for a run like she did every night and somehow got lost in the woods. Then I realized it couldn't be her. She had texted me only 10 minutes before asking me to come home soon to watch my little sister so she could go on a run. I stopped dead in my tracks and called my mom. The voice in the woods still calling my name and getting more frantic by the second. She picked up and I immediately asked her if she was in the woods. She said no, she was back home with my little sister. I swear to God, as soon as she said she was back home, her voice stopped calling my name from inside the woods. I was overcome with a wave of dread and fear that I had never felt before. Something in the woods was trying to lure me in using my mother's voice, and it knew my full name, not just my nickname, which made things even scarier because the only person who calls me Gabriel is my mom. I immediately turned and ran faster than I had ever run before back home. When I got back home, my legs felt like jello and my lungs burnt. I opened the door and there was my mom sitting on the couch with my sister. I would think this was some sort of prank, but my mom isn't one for pranks, and even if she was, there's no way she could have gotten home before me without me seeing her. My only question is, what was in the woods? When I was around 11, I lived in a trailer park in the middle of nowhere. Only about 6 people lived there. It bordered a dense forest separated by a river. I didn't have many friends while living there because my family was the only English-speaking one. I used to explore the forest for fun because I literally had nothing better to do. After a year of living there, I met 4 kids in that forest. I was really excited because I actually had some friends. They were kinda weird though. They dressed like they only had hand-me-downs from their parents, but were very clean, like even no facial blemishes. My parents wanted to meet the kids I had been hanging out with and treat them to dinner, so that day when I went out, I asked them if they wanted to, and they got kinda angry. I don't know if that's the right word for it though. They just wouldn't. Something about not being allowed to cross the river? When I was with them, we built a fort-like thing that was mostly an abandoned basement in the middle of the forest. About 5 months of hanging out with them, I saw them for the last time. That last day, they looked dirty and greasy for the first time. They were usually really clean-looking for wearing the same clothes every day, and sickly like they had smoked a pack a day for years and had the flu at the same time. When I went back the next day, our fort was destroyed, like beyond destroyed. I thought some other kids busted it up until I saw that it was filled in and overgrown. Like rotting there for over 20 years overgrown. I never saw those kids again. It freaks me out to think about it now, like, what was I doing back there? Have you even eaten with them back there? Did I just sit in a decaying old basement by myself eating sandwiches while talking to myself? It was freaky. I have so many other creepy encounters in that damn forest. Still gives me a panic attack if I think about it for too long. At the time, my friend Allie, 20 female, had just moved into a new place. I helped her move in. It was a basement suite, not the nicest place, but we were going to make do. The basement had a cold room. From what I understand, the people who owned the house butchered their livestock in there or something because there was dried blood on the ground when we were told it was from animals. That being said, we were in what I would describe as our party prime, so we wanted to go out as often as possible. While we were walking through the living room to exit, the cold room is visible, door closed. Every time we would come home, the door would be slightly cracked open enough so you could notice quite visibly. Now, the door being open when we got home would happen quite often, and we grew accustomed to it, and it bothered us less and less. She would have violent sleep paralysis almost every night where she couldn't move and saw something holding her down and breathing in her face. One night, we had a movie night and fell asleep watching Netflix. I had woken up to get a drink of water, and I noticed Allie sitting on her knees in the corner of the room giggling. Now, being slightly worried, I asked her what she was doing. She looks up at me, mouth open wide, head cocked to one side, and in a super high-pitched voice asks if I see her also and asks if I can talk to her. I honestly thought she was just being really weird and maybe playing a joke, so I went back to bed. The next morning I wake up and asked her to be honest and tell me what she was trying to achieve last night. She promised me she didn't do anything and she had a really good night's sleep. In all honesty, I don't really know what happened, but I can't get the high-pitched voice she made out of my head even to this day. This is both experiences that have happened in the past and something that happened tonight that scared the shit out of me. I've wanted to post for a while, but this one seemed like a homeless person at first. I have a few other encounters I'm tempted to put in from when I was very young, but am worried I was just your average overactive kid. Oh, and sorry if some of what I say doesn't make sense, cause my adrenaline is through the roof and fight or flight instincts are going nuts. So for a few months now, something weird has been hanging around and outside my house. The first time it became apparent was when, one night, I was in the basement. Outside the window is a porch. There's a light switch for the lights by the door. I went upstairs for a bit. When I realized later I left the lights on, I went downstairs to turn them off. When I came down, the porch lights were on. Now, my father has tried endlessly to hook them to a timer with no success, to his disappointment. I assumed that he finally figured it out and paid the lights no mind. What I hadn't known was my dad had given up weeks ago and put in an average light switch. Next morning I go down and see the lights are still on. I assume the timer didn't turn them off, so I go to shut them off, and to my shock it's a switch. This causes me to panic a bit because that meant someone had been out there and the rest of my family was asleep last night and quite likely they could have been watching me. By the way, I have extreme fear of being watched. A few weeks later, I'm sitting downstairs on the couch. I'm home alone. It's the dead of night, and my dog, who's very relaxed with frequent events, but has a habit of being too chill sometimes. Suddenly, she perks up and looks to the window. Out of habit, I look with her and see something hunched and white drooping down over our fence and run past the window. Thanks to the dirty windows and the glare of the lights, I couldn't even hope to make out what I saw or how big it was, but I yelped, panicked, and called my buddies. They were skeptical and told me it was probably a raccoon, and I ended up agreeing. I went outside with my dogs, my older chocolate lab and my German puggle, the one who had been with me. I went out trying to see what it was right away. My dogs had two very different reactions. The lab was pacing and sniffing and looking around and being very anxious. The other one was wagging her tail and looking at the trees the way she does when I have treats. Suddenly, from said trees, I hear a loud groan. These are big, strong old trees, and they don't groan, not unless something is on them. And the mountain lion who went up them a year ago proved that. Midwest United States, by the way. Now, I tried shining a light up there, but saw nothing. But the trees are thick, and it wasn't until that mountain lion growled last time that I saw him up there in the broad daylight. FYI, it is weird seeing mountain lions here. When authorities came through, they ended up determining it was sick and malnourished, so they weren't shocked it wandered into the area. I ended up going inside because my puggle was moving through the trees with the same look. My lab seemed to be getting increasingly anxious, but now was staying away from the trees and just watching them. My puggle and me, and I wasn't seeing anything, so... But all night I heard weird things. The worst was a loud slam like a tree branch had fallen, but there was nothing there. And my puggle kept going to windows and acting unhappy about being kept in. But the rest was like the sound of something on the roof, pebbles being thrown at the window, and the return of a woodpecker who should have been dead after my cats got the poor thing with a vengeance. I don't know where they are in all this. Now here's the climax that drove me here. It's been a couple of months now, and I've mostly forgotten about it. Occasionally I'll hear something weird on the front porch or front steps, or the porch light will get turned on mysteriously, but they're small things. Tonight I was with my sister and FaceTiming with a friend in the basement when we heard a screeching sound. Now my first concern was my 2 of 3 cat siblings who had taking over the area, which meant they liked to fight the raccoons. Dumb cats. Now the sound didn't sound like any raccoon I'd ever heard of, but they make odd sounds especially when 2 cats are attacking it. So I run to the window in the next room where I believe I'll be able to see them, then go out and break up the fight from a safe distance. but I instead let out a scream and a flurry of curse words. Outside, standing taller than me for sure, I'm 6 foot, so pretty tall, was a gaunt, white, humanoid figure with its back turned to the window. When I went back to the window and looked back out, it was nowhere to be seen. I at first thought it was my mind playing tricks on me. There was snow on the ground, and I was dying for a rational explanation because it scared me bad. I was shaking. I told my sister, and she laughed at me. I went upstairs later that night and got everything ready for the night and locked up. When I went back up front, I froze. I could see my cat, who seemed agitated but calm for the most part, on the garage roof looking at something on my porch. That something was the same white figure, back turned again, except this time it was squatted down and looking at my cat. It didn't seem confrontational itself, but then for God's sakes this sent me into tears. It turned its whole body twisted, and it seemed to kind of straighten as it did. I can only think of a meerkat as an example, but it was so sudden, I was sure I heard burns crack through the window. I never saw the face. As soon as it turned, fight or flight kicked in and ran into my room as fast as I could. The last thing I saw of it as I slammed my door was it on the railing as it leaped towards what I assume was the nearby tree. Ever since, I've been in my room shaking, crying, wheezing in a hysterical fit. I like paranormal stuff, but it's a hard no on experiencing this. Now that I calmed down enough to type, I've been thinking about its actions and back to the previous events. I'm trying to explain this to myself. I at first drew a comparison to the creepypasta creature, the rake. That didn't help my panic, as you can imagine, but the rake was highly hostile. This thing seemed calm and relaxed most of the time. I don't know what I saw, and it's freaking me out, and I want this down before I go crying into sleep. Please, when I wake up, give me an explanation, because I don't want this thing to be real, but this wasn't some homeless guy. I don't know. I need sleep. Sorry for the bad post. A good friend of mine recently came on our podcast and shared the events that led to this photo, all of which happened to a good friend of his named Kimberly. She came home sometime in the hours of 1 to 2 in the morning. As she was about to head upstairs to let her father know she had arrived home safely, she heard a noise, weird enough for her to do a quick walkthrough of the main floor before actually heading upstairs. As she reached the top, the alarm system went off. "Warning, an intrusion has been detected," appeared on the phone screen. Kimberly's father came out of his bedroom and tried to hurry the entirety of his family to an upstairs room so he could check out the situation. He checks the house and doesn't find anything odd with any of the rooms in the house until he opens the inside door to the garage. The garage door to the outside was wide open. During the commotion, Vivian phones Dad to see if everyone was safe. Although the garage door was open, there was no intruder or immediate danger to report on. After ending the call, locking the house, and arming the system again, a second notification appears on their phone. Kimberly's family has a premium package with Vivian's services. Included in this package are motion-sensing cameras that you can set to program at certain hours or for specific dates for when your family is away for extended periods of time. When these cameras detect motion at its designated time, it will clip and send the recording to the user's phone. The second notification opened up to the following. All of this happened in August of 2019, and there have been no answers yet. Kimberly was wearing nothing similar to what the figure is wearing, but what about the video? Play the video. When played, there's nothing that appears in the entire clip. Even when you click and drag to scrub through, frame by frame, nothing appears. The only thing we have is the thumbnail of the video.